It's Hall of Fame week right here on Locked On Spurs. Let's put in the spotlight soon-to-be Hall of Famer Tony Parker.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Chris Sabat, and you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for KENS 5 San Antonio. I am glad to have you back. Hope you're having a great work week. We'll get you through the last few days to the weekend, the very big weekend up ahead for the Spurs franchise. Hey, we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. You guys are the everydayers. We are free and available on YouTube, Spotify, KENS 5 Plus app. We are part of the Locked On NBA Network. So what are we talking about today? It's going to be all about Tony Parker. He is set to enter the Hall of Fame this weekend, capping off an incredible basketball career that spans not just the NBA, but in France as well. We're going to talk about him, give some of our favorite moments of Parker in a Spurs uniform, and then ask how come he still doesn't get the respect that he deserves among the great NBA, at least point guards, and also ask, is he the greatest Spurs point guard ever to wear the uniform? Our guest will join us in just a few minutes to talk about that and much, much more. But yeah, it's a great weekend ahead for the Spurs franchise. Back-to-back summers. Manu Ginobili last summer and just a few short days. Tony, Pop, Becky Hammon. Well, sure, we'll lump them in. Ex-Spur, Pau Gasol. So why this is so important is because this might be it. This could possibly be it for Hall of Fame big weekends for the Spurs franchise. I mean, barring anything like maybe Buford getting in as an executive. But as far as players and coaches are concerned, this could be it for quite some time. And that's why you got to really relish it. You got to soak it in. You have to absorb each and every word, every minute, every highlight, because the Spurs franchise is storied. It's so storied. I mean, just look at just numbers. What numbers? The best winning percentage so far in the NBA. Yeah, over the Celtics, over the Bulls. That should tell you a lot about the Spurs franchise, and a lot has to do with that because of Pop and Tony and Becky and past Spurs like Timmy, Manu, Gervin, and Robinson, even George Karl. He has starting the way for the Spurs back in the ABA days, now in the Hall of Fame as well. So this is a momentous time, and it's also kind of a time to close the chapter, perhaps, on the Big Three era. You know, everybody's excited for Wemby and the future of the Spurs and what could possibly lie ahead as this new era of Spurs basketball begins. But this is also a very poignant way to close the chapter on the heyday of the Spurs. So whether it be their 5 titles, Parker with 4 of those, whether it be, deep playoff runs, memorable moments from Timmy and Tony and Pop and Becky, this is just what a way to put a cherry on top and close that era of the Spurs and begin the new era starting in a few months with the Wemby era set to begin. And you just look at the Spurs franchise and my goodness, I mean, at this point, they might as well just open up a wing in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame dedicated to the Spurs. What they have done for the game, just for the game, is great. And Pop and Parker and Becky, they represent that. Becky, first female assistant coach on the coaching staff for the Spurs and making NBA history, even subbing in for Popovich, he got thrown out, becoming first female head coach of a Spur in that manner. And you have Tony Parker, one of the very few French, or at least international foreign players in the NBA to capture a finals MVP. And of course, Popovich, what more do you have to say? This is such a gloried history that's about to be celebrated one more time. And then that's it. The Spurs move on, and it should be a good way for you guys to move on as well. And I know everybody's excited for the Wemby era, and it's going to be good to look back on not only Parker's highlights, but Pop and just everybody involved. The silver and black, they've done a lot for the game of basketball, and what better way to seal it and to send them off on the right foot than the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Let's go to bring in our guest to talk about Tony Parker and more. He is Rudy Campos. There he is. There's Rudy Campos, back with the hat. Remember back in elementary days, it was hat day. Remember, who's going to wear the hat day? That's what today is. Today's hat day. By the way, as you could tell, Rudy, I'm totally in off-season mode, not wearing a blazer as I usually do and a t-shirt. I am officially in off-season mode.
I was gonna say where was the blazer, man? Where's the suit, the tie, everything like that? I'm not used to recreational Jeff here, so
well, I'm in off-season mode, so but they'll come back. They might come back this week before the big event happens for the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, and technically for Spurs going into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Hey, make sure to follow Rudy on Twitter at Sweep the League. Check out his show, Sweep the League. By the time you're listening to this show, is probably out, the newest episode, but Rudy will talk about that and more. And just like Manu Ginobili again, Rudy came off the bench at the last second to fill in for a guest who couldn't make it. But fortunately for everybody else, Rudy is back because of the hat. The hat is back. Everybody loves that hat, Rudy.
I think the hat is one thing, and we can't let everybody, we can't let the secret out, Jeff. I mean, people are begging for me to come back Locked On Spurs, so you had to just bump somebody for me.
That's what it really was. We had to bump somebody for that. Well, let's dive into it. Let's give our salute to Tony Parker, and I think on Friday we'll do for Pop and Becky and Pal. But Parker, some of my favorite moments of him is just we got to see him grow as a player from scratch, from getting benched in the finals and Speedy Claxton coming in to then seeing him take the mantle from Tim Duncan and lead the team in the 2007 finals and get the finals MVP. He's come a long way since being a 19-year-old French rookie. Sound familiar, Rudy? To this weekend getting a shrine in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I got to be honest with you, Rudy, though, when he started his Spurs career, I didn't think that he would ever see this moment in his career, depending on how rocky of a start it was for him.
I agree with you on that. I didn't expect Tony Parker to be an NBA Hall of Famer based off of, NBA credentials. I mean, he had some really good international credentials, which we know the Basketball Hall of Fame is overall international, NBA, it's everything over there. So I didn't expect him to have this kind of career. His numbers don't jump out at you, 15 points a game, 2 rebounds a game, 5 assists a game. Nothing that screams Hall of Fame worthy, but it's the 4 titles. It's the finals MVP, 6-time NBA All-Star, 3-time All-NBA second team, All-NBA rookie first team. He's got the accolades to back him up for that Hall of Fame nod. But yeah, you're right. I kind of agree. I didn't expect it. I expected him to come in, be the starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs with minimal impact, by all means.
Yeah. Popovich, as much as Popovich, at least now, jokes about how rough he was on Parker, that definitely did benefit Parker and for the Spurs and their history, and for him becoming the point guard that he was before he called it quits. You mentioned the NBA stage, the 4 titles really stand out, but it went beyond that. He was a multiple All-Star. He made the All-NBA team. Yeah, he was kind of the first to usher in this French Revolution of players to come in. It was him, Nicolas Batum, Evan Fournier, Rudy Gobert. And then look at the Spurs themselves. French players that followed in his footsteps. Obviously, Wemby, I know, but at least during that short time, that time when Parker was here, Jan Mahimi, that sound familiar? French guy. Yeah. What about this? Boris Diaw. Just really going to open up your brain here, Rudy. Livio Jean-Charles. He was a French guy that didn't work out in San Antonio. But the point is that he really pushed forward that era of French players that still continues to today with Wemby. And even Wemby himself says that, he grew up being a Parker fan, a Spurs fan. And there's him in that famous picture of him wearing the Parker Spurs jersey. So, but you mentioned the international game. I think that doesn't get looked at as enough of what he did for basketball on an international stage. Rudy, your thoughts?
Yeah, you're talking the biggest thing he accomplished, in my opinion, was the Eurobasket MVP back in 2013. Yeah. Being that was such, that's a really young age for him to be winning that kind of accolade there. You're talking, top scorer in the Eurobasketball League for 2 years, player of the year 2 years. Champion over there. Not only that, you got to remember in Eurobasket, he had 2 bronze medals, a gold medal, silver medal. under 18 gold medalist. I mean, just those, like I said, those accomplishments alone would have gotten him into the Basketball Hall of Fame. I mean, a great international career. We're just blessed as Spurs fans to have been able to see Tony come over to San Antonio. And we've got to remember, very lucky because Boston, funny story, Boston was going to select Tony Parker, I believe at number 19 or 20, but they actually selected my favorite college basketball player of all time from North Carolina, one Joseph Forte. So they took Forte. That was supposed to be Tony Parker there with that pick. They passed on him. He dropped to the Spurs. The rest is history.
Absolutely. Hey, when we get back, we're to continue our celebration of Tony Parker, get into the Hall of Fame, ask the question why he still continues to get a little bit of disrespect when it comes to the best point guards in the NBA, and then ask, is he the greatest Spurs point guard ever so far to wear that silver and black uniform? Right here with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League.
Hello there.
Hey, I want to talk to you about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times, you heard that right, 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. It's a lot of money. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Check it out. That's $200 you can spend betting from everything from the money line to the over and under to who you think is going to be the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I mean, what more can you want? Well, there's no better place to bet on MLB than on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I go there. I love that, looking at their NBA futures, their projections on the Spurs and Wemby. It's all there. You got to go to FanDuel right now. Sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA and get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
Hello there.
And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Follow him on Twitter at Sweep the League. We're celebrating Tony Parker. He's about to get into the Hall of Fame in just a few short days. And we're kind of reminiscing about his play. We mentioned some of the highlights, from the finals MVP. Rudy talked about his international presence and what Parker did for the French Revolution of NBA players. He was the first really to make a stamp on the league. But despite having that resume, which does include a gold medal in the Eurobasket tournament, multiple trips, deep Olympic trips for Team France, and 4 NBA titles and a finals MVP and multiple All-Stars and all NBA nods. The list goes on and on for Parker, but why doesn't he still get mentioned among the best point guards ever? You'll still hear the argument that Chris Paul's better. Yeah. But if we're going to go by numbers and accomplishments, Parker blows him out of the water. Or Steve Nash. People still, Steve Nash. What? Are you kidding me? What about Parker? Why does he doesn't get that respect?
So it's kind of a thin line because you can go based off of Spurs homer, or you can go off of like an NBA type guy who follows everything. Yeah. The Chris Paul thing, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I feel Parker's way better than Chris Paul. Yeah. You give me a guy like Steve Nash, you're talking about a guy who's a 2-time NBA MVP, but yet no finals in there, no finals MVP. So you've had certain basketball players that have played in the NBA that consider the NBA finals MVP holds more weight in water than a regular season MVP. So that kind of puts Parker a little bit over top Steve Nash in that sense, if you're going by that. But you got to remember, Parker's numbers really don't match up to a lot of these other point guards. If you're talking about all-time greats like Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, those guys, I mean, they just put up ridiculous numbers for their careers. Parker, only averaged like 15 points a game. But again, you got to remember, he took a back seat to Tim Duncan, to David Robinson in the beginning as well. He had a little bit of time there where he was Timmy's running mate. But then you had Kawhi Leonard come in. So that was another guy that came in. Manu took some of those, moments away as well. So those points and minutes too. So he was in that talk in that era of Spurs basketball where you already had the GOAT playing with you. You weren't going to outshine him until it was his time to kind of step away from the game, which is kind of what we started seeing towards the end of Timmy's career. But you can't take anything away from Tony. He's still one of the greatest point guards in the game. Where he ranks in people's rankings is up for debate. For me, I mean, I can say I can put him in the top 10. I can't really go top 5. We can make a case for top 10, top 15. Definitely he's got to be in there somewhere. But, for Locked On Spurs fans out there, where do you rank him? I'd love to know where you rank him because, again, it's one of those things where you don't know where to rank him. He's got the accomplishments.
He does, yeah.
He just doesn't have the stats. So what weighs more to you?
Right. And I don't want to hear the argument of, well, Tony had Tim Duncan next to him. Okay, fine. But Chris Paul, last I checked, he had some pretty solid guys around him in his career. I mean, just look at recent history. Kevin Durant, they're the same team. Who else? Now he's joining the Warriors now. Yeah. So there's that. I mean, what about Lob City? That was supposed to be the potent Lob City, with a prime Blake Griffin and Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan and, poised to make deep playoff run. This comes out short. Another reason, too, why I think maybe the Chris Paul argument is really weak, too, because Tony Parker was there when it mattered. Paul continuously not available when it's the right time, namely the playoffs. And as far as Steve Nash is concerned, same thing. Don't give me that argument that, Parker had a better squad. Steve Nash had a peak Amari Stoudemire, a Sean Marion, who was a Shaq. A Shaq came over for a minute to try to help him get him over the hump there. Grant Hill, I believe, teamed up with him. Now, granted, Grant Hill was already, on his last legs, but the point is, that's no fault of Parker. He's not the GM. He's not the one, with the basketball god saying, select Tim Duncan because I'm going to be there eventually. That's just not the way it is. I don't think that should count against Parker in any type of argument that he ranks among the best point guards ever. Your thoughts, Rudy?
Yeah, I mean, the arguments for, like you said, the case you made for Paul and Nash, I totally agree, and I totally see that. I mean, they both had really deserving teams. In Paul's case, you can argue that he had better teams. Steve Nash had that one Spurs and Suns series where they looked like they were going to torch the Spurs, if not for Robert Ory banging them into the side, to the score table, basically. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing too is ranking Parker is kind of hard. Now, the thing you got to remember too is if Parker isn't drafted by the Spurs, if he goes to another team, do his stats increase? I mean, you saw the capability. He led the league in scoring in the paint for 1 year. You never hear about that when it comes to a guard, let alone a point guard. So that usually goes to like Shaq or Tim Duncan or somebody like that. So this kind of catapults him to that next level. To reason why I say top 5 point guards. I mean, obviously you got Magic and Isaiah. Right. For me, John Stockton's got to be up there. Big O. You've got guys, Big O, Bob Cousy can even make the case. You've got guys that kind of belong in the top 5. Then you got guys like Tony that are right there. You can't really kick them out of the top 10. If you can make a case, by all means, make the case. If you want to use Steve Nash, again, that's people's opinion. Yeah. But I have to have him ranked in the top 10. The biggest thing for me was the one side I gave you, Jeff, and that's points in the paint. Leading the entire league with points in the paint, unbelievable.
For me, too, aside from that as well, just the durability. I think he only had one major injury in his career.
Towards the end.
Towards the end already. That was it. Always available. During his playing, you mentioned about the points and scoring in the paint. That was during the era of the big man. That was Shaq and Timmy and Kevin Garnett and Rasheed Wallace. Yeah. The list goes on and on. He was doing that in the era of the big guys. And with that patented teardrop shot. So, you're right. It is a little tough to rank him. But if you're looking at overall what he did on the NBA stage, if we're looking at NBA players, then he's got, top. Might push it up by saying top 12.
No, I think top 12 is guaranteed. Top 10, I think, is pretty much a guarantee as well. Looking at everybody. And, the one argument somebody can make, if I wanted to be, the villain in all this, like you mentioned, you can't blame me for this and this. Well, I can turn right around and say, well, what happened in the finals against Jason Kidd? He got benched. Yeah. So, he did have low moments in big games like Chris Paul. Let it be known it was one, but – you've got people out there that'll say the same thing. Well, he had this wrong. He did this wrong. He turned against Kawhi Leonard. And you have all these things that go against him. Obviously, everybody knows what happened in San Antonio on his time. You could mention that kind of stuff. So people have negative to say about him, positive to say about him. But as far as on court stuff and stats, he's a Hall of Famer. He's top 10. He has all the accomplishments. He's got everything you need. The only thing are the stats are not where you want them to be. But again, not his fault. He was in the Tim Duncan era.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a Tim Duncan team. So obviously he ain't going to get a lot of touches. Now, To Parker's credit, he did get the touches eventually once Tim Duncan was starting to slow down, and you saw that the Finals MVP, the All-Star nod. There was the transition from Timmy to Tony, and the Manu was a part of that as well. But Tony really took the. I mean, hell, even when Tony won Finals MVP, there's audio of Tim Duncan hugging him, telling Parker, "You did it. You led us to this point." So yeah, I mean that's a ringing endorsement from TD himself. And you look at the Big Three era, he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. You know, Timmy's always first, obviously. Then Manu, you know, everybody knows Manu. Then you say, oh yeah, and then there's Tony. You know, the fans always like he's always the third on their Big Three list. You know, Tony. You know, he was the closest thing you got to Hollywood for the Spurs during the Big Three era. Remember when he got married to Eva Longoria? That was like Princess Di and Prince Charles scenario. Like everybody was tuning in for that. You know, and then Eva Longoria would show up. You know, he had that. Oh, good Lord. I mean, he didn't get in the Hall of Fame for his rap career. That's for sure. No. You know, Balance Toi, that it is. So he had the rap album, his jump into that. And then when he rapped in front of the crowd in San Antonio after winning that title, there was that. You know, that. You know, he did have that kind of, there was a little bit of that Hollywood flair, you know. Remember he got in that incident where he was at a club and a bottle was thrown or something and it hit his eye and he was wearing goggles for a while. So he had those moments, those Hollywoodish moments, but that was the closest you got to kind of, you know, off this court distractions from the Big Three. But that was it. I mean, but nevertheless, you know, good in the community, good with fans. You know, he showed up. Not just for Spurs fan events, but for NBA fan events. You know, I living in New York City, I can tell you this much. He showed up for charitable events like ironic Steve Nash. He has a charity soccer event every summer in New York. Parker was there to help out Nash and raising money for kids in New York City and then who want to play soccer. So he did a lot of that stuff. But overall, you know, you can't deny the resume speaks for itself. He is a Hall of Famer based on everything he's done for the game of basketball, and you know, still beloved in France. And I gotta ask you this: do you think Wemby will overtake him in popularity in France? I think he might.
Well, I think he already has because of the hype that he's getting and the media coverage. Remember, Tony came in, nobody knew where Parrot Basket Racing, you know, team was, and nobody had heard of Tony Parker unless you were an international guy, you know, following the league. So Wemby's kind of already surpassed him as far as that goes, but as far as on the court, we still have a long ways to see if he comes close to that.
Absolutely. So Parker is more than deserving to enter the Basketball Hall of Fame based on everything, but is he the greatest Spurs point guard ever in Spurs history? We're going to debate that when we get back right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. But before we do all of that, and I'll give Rudy a break. Rudy, have you been to Musslingers lately?
Actually, I have. I did. And you know what? Surprisingly, I got the Alien this time. I thoroughly enjoyed it, man.
All right. I'm glad you got the Alien. It is a great drink to get. So there's your ringing endorsement from Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. All right, let's give him a break for a minute while I talk to you about Musslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. Look, it's a proud local sponsor of Locked On Spurs. So if you stayed up late last night, maybe late at work or thinking about Wemby on the court and keeping you up all night, you need a quick pick-me-up, go to Musslingers Drive-Thru Coffee right now. They have delicious pick-me-up drinks for people who are on the go. So whether you're in the mood for a latte, cold brew, the Red Bull Infused Lightning Bolt series. Those are great, by the way. I love those. You got to go to Musslingers. Over 300 5-star reviews cannot be wrong. They also have a wide selection of dairy alternatives and caffeine-free drinks if you just want to take it easy. So, and if you're new to coffee, they have the Musslinger, which is really, really good. So that'll really get your introduction to coffee. It's a combination of espresso, steamed milk, and dark chocolate and caramel. And as Rudy mentioned, the Alien, that's the new drink in honor of Wemby. It's a full can of Red Bull, heads up on that, with apple and kiwi mixed in. It is a great, great drink. But if you don't want all that caffeine, try the OG OJ. Basically, it is the Orange Julius from back in the day, recreated only at Musslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. I got to name it, everybody. I named it. So go there right now, get yourself the OG OJ. Tell them that Jeff sent you. So make sure to follow Musslingers Drive-Thru Coffee on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I mean, pick a platform. They are there. They're located at 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive. Go there right now. Open every day, Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You cannot go wrong by going there right now. They're located in the Stone Oak area, just a heads up on that. And you can find them on major social media platforms. Open every day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Life is too short for bland coffee. That's why you got to go to Musslingers. All right, let's bring them back. Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. There he is. I thought I was bringing back Tony Parker for a second, but man, there goes that.
Maybe in high school. So,
did you have the teardrop?
No, I didn't. I didn't have very many moves in the paint. I was more of a defender more than anything. And I was a pass first guy. I never really shot.
You know what? I wish Trey Jones and Tony Parker would work out together so Parker teach him the floater. I think Trey Jones that would be a great weapon in his offensive arsenal. If he ain't gonna knock down that outside shot, go to that. It worked for Tony for years. Hey, we're talking about Tony Parker entering the Basketball Hall of Fame. We're giving him his love right here on Locked On Spurs. Before I let Rudy go, I gotta ask you. Among the Spurs point guards ever to wear the uniform, you're talking about Parker, you're talking about Ross Strickland, Tony O'Daniels, Avery Johnson, whose number is retired, Johnny Moore. The list goes on and on. The Spurs have had great point guards. But is Parker the greatest Spurs point guard ever? And I know you're going to probably pick DeJounte Murray, right? Is that
right? He's actually not probably in my top 10, DeJounte Murray. So definitely not taking DeJounte. But as far as Parker goes, I mean, Jeff, there's really no thought about it. If you take more than a second to think about this, you need to question your Spurs fandom. You're talking Tony Parker, again, finals MVP, 4-time NBA champion. I mean, the all-time all-time best point guards, period. I mean, you look at the Spurs rosters for point guards in the past, you're talking guys like Avery Johnson, who arguably, I'm going to say Avery has the most important shot in Spurs history because it got him their first NBA title when they were in New York. So I'll give Avery that much. A guy who's one of my favorites, I have one of his jerseys. I had it custom made, was James Silas, Captain Late. I mean, he's one of my favorite Spurs. I never really saw him play, but my dad was a big fan. Johnny Moore, you mentioned, I mean, one of the all-time assist leaders for the Spurs. It goes on and on. George Karl. I mean, we know about George Karl. John Lucas played for the Spurs too. You've got some great guards in there, but nonetheless, Tony Parker is hands down the greatest Spurs point guard of all time. I can make a small case for Greg Sutton, maybe a Nigel Knight, but for those kids that don't know him, I'm not going to.
For those guys. Yeah, it's unfortunate for DeJounte Murray. I think he was on that track. Perhaps could have challenged it if, he took him to glory and whatnot. But, I mean, to go over even Captain Late, I mean, that's huge. And I have to agree. I think Parker even supersedes him and overtakes him. It's a shame. I mean, Captain Late, they got close, man. Didn't they get close one year against the Bullets? I think it was the Bullets.
Yeah, Washington.
Yeah. They got close to a title, him and Gervin.
Wasn't it Danny Ferry's dad that turned off the lights and never admitted to it?
Never admitted it,
Yeah,
they were out there. And I think Ross Strickland probably could have done it if he didn't have the infamous over-the-back pass.
That Spurs team, I think, would have probably won the title that year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
they were an assist away. They were a simple pass away from beating Portland.
They were up 7, right? With seconds left, something like that. Like up 7 points.
Yeah, that pass. That was probably the worst bonehead mistake in Spurs history. But I think they would have gone on to beat the Pistons that year. Truthfully.
Yeah. The Spurs have had many great point guards, but when it comes to the greatest Spurs point guard at this time, you have to give the nod to Tony Parker. And for me, I think a close second, man, this is tough. I think it had to be Captain Late, James Silas. Number 3, I got number 3. I'm between Avery and Johnny Moore.
I almost would put Johnny Moore ahead of Avery. Avery, Avery's a great leader, but you can say the same about Johnny Moore and Captain Late. For me, Avery, great personality, great Spur, but I think it's that one shot in the finals that gets him the more notoriety more than anything. I
no knock against Avery. Love him. I don't think his jersey should be up there. I don't think it should be retired. But, Man, who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing a point guard in Spurs history that we're forgetting.
I mean, we can go old school, 70s, early 80s was what? Mike Gale was one.
Mike Gale, yeah. It's a shame that his jersey's not retired. Now, that guy has a case to have his jersey retired.
Yeah, definitely Mike Gale should have his jersey retired.
Mm-hmm.
If Maurice Cheeks actually gave a damn, he probably would have been a really good Spurs point guard.
Maurice Cheeks slept at the airport hotel when he got traded. He got traded from Philly, right? Or was it from New York? No, he got traded from
Philly. He got traded from Philly. Johnny Dawkins was another one, but again, didn't have a long enough career in San Antonio to even have, a ranking. But Mike Gale, man, I think, would you put Mike Gale over Avery?
Yeah, I think I would.
I think so too. Yeah. So then Avery would be fifth, maybe.
Yeah, fifth
on the all-time.
Yeah, but as of now, Tony Parker wears the crown of the greatest Spurs point guard ever. Tony Parker will be inducted this weekend into the Basketball Hall of Fame alongside Popovich, Hammond, ex-Spur Pau Gasol, and he's going to join other Spurs: Robinson, Duncan, Manu, George Karl. Wow, and a lot of Spurs are entering the Basketball Hall of Fame. But as I said in the intro, this could be it for a while. I think the next one probably be R.C. Buford because they do an executive.
Yeah,
I think maybe he might be next. But as far as players and coaches are concerned, this might be it for quite a long time, Rudy. This might be it.
Steve Kerr, maybe.
Steve Kerr, yeah, but I think he's going to probably go in as a Warrior. I think so. As a coach?
As a coach, a Warrior, as a player, he would probably go in as a Bull, I would think.
Yeah, I think so.
More than likely.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Hey, we're done talking. We want to hear from you. Tony Parker is entering the HOF this weekend. What are your favorite moments about Parker? Why do you think he still gets disrespected even till today? And is he the greatest Spurs point guard ever? You can let Rudy know on Twitter at Sweep the League. Let me know on Twitter at Jeff G Spurs Zone. Rudy, we got to let you go, but I know your show either is out right now by the time this is out or it's going to be out. What's going on with Sweep the League?
Yeah, so when this is out right now, our show should be out at the same time as this one as well. But right now, it's kind of we're getting ready for football season. Obviously, Spurs basketball is going to be kicking up. MLB is kind of in the mid stride right now, so we're talking a lot of live stuff right now. Interesting, the episode that y'all will be hearing that's going to be out right now is going to involve a lot of Candace Avila Garcia, who's definitely one of the favorites on Sweep the League. She's the boss. Everybody is talking about some kind of snail stuff that was for skin. She has an update on that. Jeff, you gave me that look. You need to listen to it. We had one show already with it. She's giving us an update on how it worked, and apparently it's the greatest thing for your skin. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go into any further details. You got to see the episode.
All right. Well, there you have it. More reason to find out what in the hell is going on at Sweep the League with snails and whatnot. Follow Rudy on Twitter at Sweep the League. We will be back probably this Friday to put a wrap on the Hall of Fame celebration. We're going to put into the spotlight Popovich and Hammond. Probably get a little love to Pau Gasol as well. So, big weekend for the Spurs out in Springfield, Mass. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. You guys are the everydayers, and we'll be back soon. Again, we're still in off-season mode. So at least you get about 3 to 4 episodes a week, but we're here still to give you the latest and greatest in silver and black. And make sure to check out Locked On Spurs on YouTube, the Campos 5 Plus app, iTunes, Spotify. The list goes on and on. But for Rudy Campos, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.